All right, well, welcome everybody to our April Water Watchers meeting. I'm gonna, first of all, I guess our first thing on our agenda is just welcome and introduction. So if anybody is new here or anybody has any stuff that they want to share or just say hello, then feel free. I've got a good mix of new and old here I can see in our water monitoring group. So I'd say just speak up if anybody wants to share anything. I'm going to go ahead and share our little slideshow here and get us going. So our agenda for today is we're going to talk about some, after we get through welcome and introductions, we're going to talk about some Earth Day events that are coming up. We've got some updates to our training and event schedule, so I just want to highlight a couple of changes that came up. A big thing that we're going to go over this evening is Dalen Gates is an amazing programmer who works in ArcGIS, and he's been working on a new data entry app for us. So he's going to walk us through where that's at right now and what we can do to provide feedback on that. And then Gary Olson is going to talk with us about what Thornton Creek Alliance has been doing, some interesting results, kind of comparing some of the data they've been collecting on bacteria and conductivity. And then if anybody has anything else that they want to share, people will be welcome to share that. Okay, so just talking about Earth Day. Earth Day is right around the corner. It's in April every year. This year it is April 22nd. And on April 20th, there's a number of events that are going on. One is our very own Swamp Creek Habitat Restoration Project, which is associated with Sno-King Watershed Council. And that, if you go to that website, there's actually about 3 work parties a month. So there's one on April 20th and also one on April 27th. I also just got a newsletter from Lake Forest Park Stewardship Foundation that they've got a community parks cleanup at Whispering Willow Park. Anna Bachman with Puget Soundkeeper asked that I share that Duwamish Alive has got a bunch of different Earth Day volunteer type events, and that they will be, Puget Soundkeeper will be at a park site on the Duwamish River. So if you look at the Duwamish Alive site, you can see that. Or you can go to Puget Soundkeeper's website for those events. And then on April 27th, we are going to have a water quality demonstration and some other activities at Rhododendron Park in Kenmore. So anybody who wants to participate in that will be welcome. So that's our Earth Day events. And then just other training updates. Mentioned that we've got those water quality demonstrations on the 27th. And then because of a time conflict, that caused me to bump our stream flow and habitat assessment class to May 23rd. I think it was originally scheduled for April 27th. And then we'll have a practical session on May 25th, which also got moved.
Motion detected at the front door.
And then we're going to have an in-person meeting, a recertification session on June 18th. And I have the location to be determined on that. In July, we'll be doing our Zoom class for stream biomonitoring and BIBI, which is benthic index of biotic integrity, which is another way of assessing stream macroinvertebrates. And then we'll do a practical session for stream biomonitoring on the 13th, practical BIBI session on the 20th. We have our picnic on the 14th. We'll be doing sample collection at various sites. So if you're interested in participating in that, let me know. That'll be typically late summer, early fall. Same with stream biomonitoring. And then we've got our Stream Fest event on September 14th. And then we've we got some more meetings and some more training. So another monitor meeting. Our next monitor meeting after the June one will be in October, and then our next field training is going to be October. All right, any questions on all that? That was all kinds of stuff. Okay, I don't hear any questions. So
Will all of this be on the website?
yes, yeah, this is on our website. Yep.
Thanks.
In fact, has an excellent prompt. Here it is. They're all on the website. Okay, I'm going to talk about, actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to quit sharing. I'm going to turn it over to Dalen right now so he can talk about what he's been doing with our new data entry app.
Yeah, I'm really excited to share what I have for you guys. I made a lot of great progress in the new surveys, and I want to get some feedback from you guys. So today, if you have a phone or you're on your computer, I'm going to post a link in the chat, and then there'll be a QR code on the screen, so you can go through the mock survey. Pretend to put some data in, and you can give me some feedback on the survey, because there's still a lot of like minor changes that need to be made to it, and a lot of things that I'm not familiar with the nuances on when it comes to the ranges of certain values. So I'd love to get that feedback from you guys so I could put this in the survey so we can have some guide rails to make sure that the values are, what you guys expect them to be. So I'm going to go ahead and screen share a little presentation I have here. Just give me a second to find it. There we go. Okay, so you guys see the little presentation, right? Yep, you guys are good. So there's a QR code here on the screen. If you guys want to scan that with your phone, it'll pull up the survey on your phone. And then in the chat right now, if I am able, where's the chat? There we go. I'm putting two links. One's to the chemical survey mock survey, and then the other one's to the bacterial mock survey. So you can go ahead and share that around with other people. It's okay to put data in there and everything. But in the bottom of this survey in particular, you'll see there's a place for giving me feedback. But real fast, let's go through it together. So I'll open it up. Can you guys see it loading? You guys see the survey loading, or is it still on the presentation?
Nope, it's loading.
Awesome. So you can see here, I make sure to specify that this is a mock survey. The inputs will be cataloged. So anything you do put in there, I'll be able to read those inputs if you need anything to be pulled back for your own uses. But this is not final. So the stuff you put in there will not necessarily be used for, keeping track of the monitoring. So this is mostly for practice and for getting feedback on the survey. So you guys can tell me what I need to change to it, any constraints or programmings that you think I should put in for clarification. But as we start, there's the group name. Right now it's default to Sno-King Water Watchers. But from my understanding, what Eric tells me, there's other groups that you guys work with. So I'll be able to pre-fill that in there. So if there's a site that's monitored by another group, they'll be marked there. The sample date time is auto-filled to the current date. You can go ahead and change this. This is a necessary field. Next, you put in the monitor name. So for me, it'll just be Dalen. You can go ahead and put Dalen G or anything in there that marks who's doing the monitoring. The site code will be something that's automatically put in for every single site. I have these on a file along with the watershed, which I got from the HUC12 identification, along with the water body. This is the name of the location. And then the site location, which is specified by the previous data that I got from Sergio. The location has already been marked for all the sites that you guys currently have. It automatically inserts some coordinate points, so we know the exact location already of all the sites that are currently on record. Those will be automatically put in. And then you go put in a watercolor. How's it look? Does it look clear from other things? Let's just say clear. Water condition defaults to an adequate depth of water. It assumes that you're working on a body of water that's adequate depth, but if it's inadequate depth, dry or no access, you can put that in here. Tidal influence, same thing, very similar to the Global Water Watcher survey. So weather condition would say it was raining this day. And then air temperature. You could put in the air temperature that you measure. Let's say it's about 20, 70 degrees. Let's say the water cool temperature is about a little bit colder, 18. Altitude is something that I pulled from USGS website. So I have the elevation for each one of these sites because I have their location. I can find their elevation very easily. And I have that pre-filled out for us. That comes into play in a later question. So pH, let's say it's a pretty average pH of about 6.5. It's a little bit acidic. Dissolved oxygen reading. Could you guys give me a dissolved oxygen reading? What would you say is an average dissolved oxygen reading? I'm gonna go ahead and put like a number up or something. I'll just put it in there. This is something I'm less familiar with. I've never done a dissolved oxygen reading.
10.
So Dalen, would this be milligrams per liter then? Is that what we're measuring?
See, there's something we could put in there. I should put a little milligrams per liter. Yes, this is in milligrams per liter. It says it later down here, but I should put this up here as well. Yes. So 10 milligrams per liter. And then let's say I want to put in 10.7. There's a little thing down here which tells you that it must be 0.6 as specified before. It will not let you put something in that's greater or less than 0.6 away from the previous value. So let's do 10.6. It'll automatically average this out, give you the average dissolved oxygen. And then I went through the equation for percent oxygen saturation, and it will automatically find the percent oxygen saturation given the elevation, the temperature in Celsius, and the 2 dissolved oxygen readings. So we have that on file here. Number of alkalinity drops, let's say, I don't know, is 4 a right number? Let's say
That would be a
4.
little bit low. It might, typically be like 12 or 16, but it could be 4.
All right, let's go ahead and just put 13 in there. It'll automatically do the conversion for total alkalinity in milligrams per liter, so that'll be 65. For hardness, let's go ahead and say 10. So that'll be 100 milligrams per milligrams per liter. And then for turbidity sample, let's say you could do 25. It'll automatically do the calculation for turbidity and JTUs. So let's say, I don't know, 9. It'll go to 90. But here's another thing. If you put in 0, it will default to 2 as it's supposed to. So let's go back, try 50. You put in 0, it'll default to 2 as it's supposed to. Let's put in 3. It works, it multiplies it by the correct number, 5, to go ahead and get you the correct JTU units. And then here are some extra tests that I put in as well. If you have the measuring equipment for Seshi depth, you can input that here. So it's 10 meters, say 0.8 meters or 0.6 meters, that's fine. Conductivity. What's the usual conductivity? I know it's measured between 0 and about 4,000 or even greater sometimes, depending on how murky the water is. Let's say 2,000.
That's a little high.
That's high. It's really, really dirty.
Fresh water should be about 200, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's do like 200. Salinity and PPT. You got to enter it within 2 decimal places. So let's try 3.99. Do more. Does it let you? Probably. That's something I got to code in. Make sure it only lets you do 2. So 3.99. Specific gravity. What's a good number for specific gravity, would you say?
That's a good question because we don't typically do that test, so I actually don't know.
It'd be around 1 for most fresh water, 1.0 or maybe 1.08 or 0.008.
So specific gravity, that's relative to altitude, right? No? That's something I got to figure out. I'm not quite sure about that measurement, but if there's more that I can do to automate that, that'd be really interesting. So
Specific
nitrogen,
gravity is density, and it should be 1 for fresh water, approximately 1.
I'll put it at 1 then. 1. So we can measure nitrates in milligrams per liter. What's a good one for that? Maybe like 5. Is that something that sounds about correct?
I think 5 would be high.
5 would be high.
Oh, Bob knows some good numbers for that. What would you say, Bob?
0.2.
0.2. And then phosphate, I'm guessing it's something similar. So if I did like 0.1, would that be about correct? So let's do that. And then what's a good like turbidity number, would you guys say?
Well, hopefully 0, but I mean, it could be, it could be 50.
Let's go throw like 45 in there. And then TSS. So that's something quite a question I have to get. What unit is TSS measured in?
Total suspended solids.
Yes.
What's the unit on that, Bob?
Milligrams per liter in fresh water, I would expect it to be 1 or less.
Just go ahead and throw 1 in there then. But yes, and then you can put in comments for any other additional things that you notice about the water here. That's fine. And then you get to this review section, which I remember getting a lot of feedback on that you guys really wanted this review section to make sure that everyone has to check their work. So the air temperature is 20. The water temperature is 18, 6.5, 10, 10.6, 109% saturation. Total alkalinity drops 13, 10, 3.6, 200, 3.99, 1.2.1, 45, 1. And then you have to click the confirmation. You cannot submit a record without first confirming your records submitted by the same person. So I'll put Dalen G. You have to put a little signature here. So excuse my bad handwriting. But you go ahead and do a little signature there. And then part of this survey in particular, if you have any comments or concerns or information that you'd like to give to me to program into this survey, go ahead and type it up here. I'll go ahead and review those comments and create a documentation of what needs to be changed. Send that over to Eric for confirmation, and I'll get those changes in the survey. Because as you see above, I'm not super familiar with all these units. I know some of these units have ranges, say like from 0 to 100, -3 to whatever. I don't necessarily know those ranges. So I'd love to hear feedback from you guys on what are the kind of expected ranges you'd see, because I can program those guide rails within the survey. So say, you actually do turbidity units, you hit 0 a couple extra times. I want that to be blocked out. I want it to be, as cogent and precise as possible. So if there's with your guys's, with these your monitors expertise, I'd love to hear just what are some kind of expected ranges for a lot of these values, so I can program them into those guide rails. Yeah, so that's kind of it for the physical chemical monitoring one. Then you can go ahead and say nothing for me because I'm not sure what to change yet. Then you submit it. Takes a second. You get a little message, thank you and congratulations for submitting a physical chemical test. And there you go. Nice and simple. It'll be automatically registered within the system. It'll, in the future, when I get the displays up, displays will automatically display your data so you can see what it looks like. If there's ever a mistake and you want to go back and tell me or Eric that you want to remove a record or change a record, it's very easy to do. All I got to do is go back into the system and make a little change. I can also make it so Eric in particular, since he's the one that runs, is able to do the changes himself as well. So it's nice and simple. You don't need me as much, but let's go ahead and move on to the next one. The bacterial. Any questions on the physical chemical?
Just a comment on
Yes.
with NTU, it's usually the water's so clear that we can't get a number for it. So we'd say like less than 10 or less than 8 or something like that. So instead of a numeric value, it would be kind of an alphanumeric thing with the less than sign in it.
I see. So definitely add that comment in. If you can complete the survey or message Eric saying that for NTUs, that there's a possibility that it's going to be less than something, but you don't necessarily know. I could totally add a little text field beneath that specifies that it's less than a certain amount. That's not very hard for me to add in. But I just want to make sure this survey is easy for you guys to fill out as possible. That's my goal. And it's similar but better than the one from the Global Water Watcher survey. I want to make sure it's tailored to your guys' needs.
This might be a conversation for later, but David brought up a really good point about turbidity, which I find frustrating because in order to do the water quality assessment that Department of Ecology has for labeling streams, you have to have a turbidity value, and you can't say less than 8 or less than whatever it is. So I'd like to, that's perhaps for a different time and different conversation, but we should really figure out what to do with that. The other thing, Dan, first of all, this is fantastic. I really love it. The only thing I was hoping to get some feedback from everybody is when we do pH, I get very frustrated with just the 0.5 unit demarcations, because we also use a pH meter and we record both. So is it possible to have a pH that we have for the kits as well as a pH for if you do a meter option as well, which gives you a much more, precise digital reading? It's not just in the 0.5, demarcations.
I totally could do that. Yeah. So like you want to go down like a certain number of decimal points.
Yeah, well, it really only goes out to, well, I take that back. I'm not sure what my meter goes out to, but anyways, it gives you a range. You could do 0.8, 0.7, 9. It could be like 7.7, 7.6, rather than 7.5 or 8. It's just, it gives you a little bit more of a precise reading. So it'd be nice to have that option in there as well.
No, I see that. That definitely wouldn't hurt to have a second pH box where you just can input a number. It wouldn't be very hard for me to blend. I just want to make sure it's up to your guys' standard. So I'll talk to Eric on that one. Yeah, I can go ahead and put a second pH box where you can just input a number as well, just so we can have it for records. Another thing I should have. Oh, yes, Eric.
Or what we could do also, I think to make the data entry easy, you selected a radio button type of fill in there, but we could just make it a fillable field, where you just enter a numeric value. And then, so because when we do the test, we're recording it, if we're just using the global water watch techniques, we're just recording it 7.5, 7. So we could just enter that value just the same as we were entering the number of drops. I think that would accommodate both methods. Similarly, I think with the NTU turbidity measure, I think that with the turbidity tubes that we're using, we're limited in our accuracy because you really can't say anything unless they're greater than 8 NTUs. You really can't comment on what it is. But, if you were using a turbidimeter, a digital turbidimeter, you would have a more precise value. You could enter a much more precise value there. So that might be something procedurally where we say, if you're using a turbidity tube, I don't know, we'll figure that out. But if you're using the turbidity tube, you might enter, have a checkbox, no perceivable turbidity, and it would, with the tube, it would default to a value of 8. Whereas if you used a meter, you would enter the actual value.
Okay, I kind of see what you're talking about. So like if you're using a certain measurement device, I can do like a radio button for the type of measurement device you're using. And the input after that for turbidity will change depending on the measurement device you're using. That can be a possibility. So I'd love to talk to you guys about that. So there's different ways of measuring turbidity, and depending on the way that you're measuring it, it can be like it has to be 8 or below. I'm sorry. So I'm trying to understand it. But yeah, I kind of see what you guys are talking about. Once I get that in writing, yeah, for sure, I could definitely implement like a radio button for different ways of recording turbidity.
It's sort of similar to the JTU turbidity, where the other turbidity range where you really can't say 0. So if you say 0, it defaults to a 2. It'd be essentially a similar thing with the NTU tubes, where if you say a 0, it defaults to an 8.
I see.
Because you just essentially can't, they're not that accurate at low levels.
Yeah, that'll be really easy to do. That'll be really easy to implement for sure. And the other one you guys wanted to change was the pH. So just go ahead and just make this you can enter it up to like maybe 2 decimal places, and it's going to have the guide rails where it has to be between 0 and 16, I believe it is, or 14. 14. It has to be between 0 and 14. Yeah, it's totally possible. I can totally make that change. So let's go ahead. I'll write down this documentation later. Maybe I'll have a short meeting with Eric where I get these changes in, so I make sure they're in. But yeah, I can go ahead.
Question.
Yes.
Yeah, of course. Does your app produce a graph of the data? And if so, can we see what one might look like?
Not yet. So that's actually going to be the next steps. I was going to talk about that on the final slide, but I'm going to be taking your guys' previous data from Sergio, and I'm going to be creating some graphs and show you guys kind of what the display process is going to look like. That's the next steps. Yeah, I'm really excited for that. But yes. Oh,
Is the
sorry,
previous
question?
data going to be ported to this system? Is the historic data going to be ported?
Yes, that's the idea. I'm going to append it to the new data so you can see, past data as well. That's the idea. That's the plan.
Hey, Dalen, just while we're talking data, where will the data live?
Well, right now it's living as a CSV. I just kind of have it both on Google Drive and my computer, but it'll be in what's it called, Esri Online, so it can survive in like a online data portal. And then I'm going to see if I can use ArcPy to automatically stitch it to new data that comes out. So it's already there. It's like kind of backlogged.
Okay.
But yeah, that's going to be coming up pretty soon. Other than that, yeah. Another thing I should really mention is there's certain fields that have to be filled out for the survey to be completed. You have to put in the date time. You have to put in the monitors. You have to put in air temperature. So that's a requirement. And I think that's it. Those are the fields that you have to put in to complete this survey. And if you do not put in those fields, the survey cannot be completed. I'd love to talk to you guys about, like, is there a situation in which you wouldn't be able to get air temperature? Like, if you couldn't get air temperature, you probably couldn't get water temperature, right?
So I think you probably will need to, just an opinion here, but in order to calculate some of the dissolved oxygen, you need a water temperature. So that might need to be a required field. I'm not a scientist, just saying.
That is true. Something I can do is if you do not put in water temperature, the dissolved oxygen options won't even come up. So that's something I could totally add in. There's lots of conditional statements that I can do so that, it's kind of cascading where things come up if you fill in other things. Like you don't see the review at all, or I guess the review does show, but it usually stays down, I guess, in the temporary one where you can't even really do the review until you've really input a lot of the other stuff. But, yeah, I could do that. So this question doesn't even show up until you input that.
Actually, I think just straight out making it a required field would be more straightforward for people, because if they don't see the dissolved oxygen fields, they'll be going, why isn't this here? Whereas it's just straightforward. You enter, yeah.
Just make it required. I'll talk to Eric about that. Yeah, I just want to make sure that there's not a situation in which you're able to fill out the field, but you don't have water. So I don't want someone to get stuck there. Like they don't have a thermometer for the water for whatever reason. But yeah, I understand what you're talking about. I could probably make it a required field. I'll just, once again, we'll keep in communication with Eric on making that one required. But yeah,
And
I could do that.
hey, Dalen, just for
Yes.
right now, so the test version that we have on this is we just have it set up for kind of a site that we no longer monitor, right? So, but for people to know, there will be essentially one of these survey forms for each site. So if you have an individual site, your watershed, your water body, all that stuff will be pre-filled. You'll still have to enter some of the data, but some of the things that remain the same for that site month to month will automatically populate. But so for purposes of just testing this out, I guess don't worry about the fact that what you see is something that is a site that you don't deal with. I would say just test out using this app and going through with some sample data that you might have. This isn't going to be recorded. It's just going to be for purposes of getting feedback on how the app performs. And the other thing about this is you can fill this out either on your computer on a desktop, or you can also fill it out on a mobile device like a phone.
Exactly. Yeah.
I would suggest not having any of the measurements be required. For example, you might get out to the field and find your thermometer has a bubble in it, so you can't measure temperature accurately. Um, so you could still measure dissolved oxygen. You wouldn't be able to do saturation, but would be kind of a shame to lose everything else. Or you may have a reagent that's expired, so you can't measure a particular parameter. The other thing is we move to non-standard measurements like electronic pH measurements. We need to have metadata to talk about what devices are being used. Using the Global Water Watch standard, it's kind of everybody's using the same techniques. So, it's kind of specified in the course materials what you'll be doing, but the nitrogen and phosphate are not part of that standard, and we're moving to a new approach to doing bacteria, and we kind of need metadata to talk about what we're doing that's different than what Global Water Watch is doing.
I see what you mean. So like maybe like a little radio before you do pH of what's the method you're using to do it. Are you doing drops? Are you doing a test meter? Any other ways? But something like that.
Yeah,
that
you
kind
could
of
have like a radio button that's pre-filled for what we normally do, and then maybe one that's other. And if you click other, you get a text field you can fill in, and say I'm using a YSI meter.
Okay. Yeah, and I appreciate that too. It's like that's also where I was coming from with not having too many fields required. Yeah, it's because I'm not sure when you're out in the field what tools you may or may not have. So when I do have something required, I want to make sure it's absolutely required, like to even like complete the test. But water temperature is one that's definitely like I think is on the fence for me. I understand that. Like if you don't have water temperature, can you do a lot of the other tests? I don't necessarily fully understand that. But I'll talk to Eric on that one. We'll decide if we're going to make that one absolutely required or not. But yeah, like stuff like that. I love hearing this kind of feedback for these things. This definitely makes me think. Yeah, like any radio buttons before a question for what kind of tools you're using, I can easily have that in there. More data really doesn't hurt. It just makes the survey take a little bit longer to fill out, which is, it can be ideal depending on what you guys want. I'm really trying to tailor the survey to you guys, which is really cool. Yeah. Another thing is, I made sure to share the QR code so you guys can do this on your phone. You can just scan on the QR code, it'll pop it up on your phone, nice and easy. Did anyone try that? I see Eric trying now.
One other thing, I don't know if anyone uses dissolved oxygen meters, but that might be another choice to put in a radio button.
Just for what type of what method you're doing for observing dissolved oxygen, whether it's a chemical test or a meter. Yeah, no, absolutely. I appreciate that kind of feedback. So yeah, put it all in the comments, tell me about it. And I'm going to talk to Eric about kind of putting it in more of the finalized versions of the surveys. And sure, anything else for the chemical one? I don't think so. Obviously there's the comment section. I feel like that's going to be really important for any extemporaneous circumstances. That could definitely be put in there. Oh, and I think we can go ahead and start taking a look at the bacterial survey. So here's the QR code. If there's anybody on their phone right now and wants to take a look at it, I'll give you guys a little bit of a chance to scan it. If it doesn't come up or anything, or there's any issues, just let me know. And then also in the chat, there should already be a link to the bacterial survey if you guys want to open that up and start playing around with it. Throw some mock data in there. And then I'll go ahead and open it up myself. Here we go. So once again, this is a mock survey. Inputs will be cataloged, but they are not final. Group name, same. The sample date and time for the bacterial one is not pre-filled. This is intentional because when somebody is filling in this chart, they may be doing it later. Eric has a specific reason for this, to not have it pre-filled out. I don't remember the exact
Yeah,
reason.
it's because if it defaulted to the current date and time, you do your count about 24 hours after you have done your sampling. So you're gonna want to enter the date that you collected the sample.
It's gonna probably be late, yeah, before. So you don't want it to start today if it's gonna be from yesterday, exactly. So let's say it's from yesterday. I did it at this time yesterday. Monitor name. Site code's the same, watershed's the same, water body's the same. These will be defaulted depending on the site location. So these will be pre-filled out. Zoom in. You can zoom in and take a look at your site, but this is already pre-filled out based off the coordinate points given from Sergio to Cripple Creek. Let's see. Let's say the water is looking tannic today. Let's say it's adequate depth and it is unknown. Water temperature, let's say it's a little bit warmer today, 22. Water temperature is a little bit cooler, say like 20. So here's a one where it has to be between 1 and 3. If you put 4 in, it'll tell you there's guide rails there. You have to put between 1 and 3. Incubation time. It's 24 hours. Not a 12-hour format, correct? Yes. So the time we did the incubation would say was like 2 hours ago. Media expiration date. Put in the month. So let's say 2024. Say expires in June. Incubation temperature, let's say I did it at 40. You can't put in 40. You have to do it between 29 and 38 because those are the temperatures that incubation must occur at. So let's say 35 or 25. There we go. Incubation time period, the default is 24 hours, but you can put a another number there. I'd love to hear guide rails for incubation period. Is there a period that's so long it doesn't make sense? Is there a period that's too short, like an hour, that doesn't make sense? I'd love to hear some guide rails for this one. So let's say the first count, we get 4 samples of count 4 E. coli colonies. And let's say we found 7 in the second one and 5 on the
Whoa.
third one. Oh, yes. Someone said something. Are these bad numbers? You got to tell me if they're bad numbers. I wouldn't know.
They're not great numbers, but they're not terrible if you had a 3 milliliter sample. I mean, let's see what numbers it gives us, but we could do the math and figure it out. But they're worse than water quality standards.
Yeah, these are looking bad. So there's 533.3 E. coli colonies per 100 milliliters of water. I'm guessing that's pretty bad.
Yeah, worse than 100 is bad.
Ooh, that's really bad. Some dirty water there. And then it's kind of the same for coliform testing. So let's say 3, 1, maybe last one 0. A little bit better. 133.
And I talked with Dalen. We made the other coliform fillable but optional because the Global Water Watch method, we count other coliform, but a lot of individuals and programs are moving to just counting E. coli. So we made those optional fields. So if you're using the method, the type of card that counts E. coli and other coliform, then we could fill both those out. But the other coliform is optional. The main purpose of sampling the other coliform, I had a discussion with Sergio at Global Water Watch about this, is just so that if you return a complete blank because you have an E. coli only card, you would not, his thought is you're almost never going to get 0 on other coliform. So therefore, if you're counting other coliform, you know that you didn't just accidentally do a blank sample with nothing in it. So that's a reason why you might want to do other coliform. On the other hand, if that's not an issue, having other coliform can make it more difficult to count colonies sometimes because of questionable colors, etc. So that's why we're trying out the E. coli only cards now, just to make it easier to count, and because that's what we're primarily concerned with.
So yeah. This
And
survey's a
should
lot
these
shorter.
Yeah, Eric-
averages be arithmetic means or geometric means?
That's a whole nother discussion. Right now, the Global Water Watch is doing just an average is what is showing up on Global Water Watch. but the water quality standard and the geometric mean and the number, the period of, that's over a number of samples. That's something that is, I don't know, Bob could probably comment on how he calculates that and displays it, but right now Global Water Watch just does average.
Well, I use the average for the 3 plates for a particular day. Use the geometric mean for the 3-month mean.
Yeah, Eric, one other thing, about what Sergio was saying, in the old system with the Petri dishes, people did sometimes make the mistake of adding twice to the same bottle and 0 to another bottle. So using, what he's talking about helps you to understand maybe what's happening in those situations. With the cards, that kind of a mistake is highly unlikely that you're going to put 2 samples on the same card. So I think we're a lot safer not worrying about, having a better count than worrying about having, some other colors that we're trying to figure out what's going on.
Sure.
Yeah, that's definitely stuff I can't necessarily think about, like if there was different samples and different sample volumes. Definitely something to consider, maybe consider if there's this worth considering. But if what you're saying about the cards is it's highly unlikely, then I guess it's not worth changing. But yeah, let me know more about that one if change needs to be on that. That is interesting.
Yeah, I think maybe for our forum purposes right now, I think like the average is still essentially that's mimics how we've been doing it for Global Water Watch. Maybe on the display end, once we have a series of measurements in there, we'll be able to display the geometric mean data, after processing this kind of on the back end for the display purpose,
Right.
but not necessarily on the form where we're collecting it.
Right.
One other thing to keep in mind is with some of the older data, 5 mil samples were allowed. I don't know if people actually collected those, but your guide rail for entry going forward, 1 to 3 is right. But if you find old data where the sample volume was 5, that could easily have been right in those days.
Well, the good news is the guide rails here are only for the survey. So when I do append the old data, and some of them are going to be above 5, when that shows up on the graph, it'll just ping above, which is okay. It's not going to like say, oh no, this is above 3 or anything. The guide rails are only for the survey itself.
Yeah, and I guess there are some monitors who shall remain nameless who may have a stack of old forms that they didn't enter that they might want to someday enter that could have larger samples.
That'll definitely be something to keep in mind. You gotta let me know about that one because the math, oh no, I guess it's not going to change any of the math because it's the 100, I think, divided by the sample number, then multiplied out by the average count, and that's how I'm getting the average per 100 milliliters. It's just a pretty simple calculation there.
Yeah,
So I don't think that would affect.
I think it works for now, but we could potentially, if we have a case, maybe if we have an individual case where we need to make some changes, we could change a survey.
Exactly. It was just changing the little the guide rail in there. So just push it to 5 or temporarily push it to like whatever number we need. Obviously, there's the comment section. So any extemporaneous circumstances, rainfall, runoff, unusual smell or color, etc. That can be put in here. And then there's the review section where you are prompted to review all of your work before you go ahead, confirm it, which is required once again by myself. Once again, apologize for my signature.
That's pretty good with the mouse.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying. And then some feedback. I really appreciate any feedback that you guys or anybody you can share the survey with that's knowledgeable in these fields. Share it with them if they have any feedback for me, for guide rails, for things that feel like they're appearing wrong, or some mathematical equations that feel like they're putting out wrong inputs. Please let me know so I can go ahead and change those. Then we'll go ahead and submit it. You'll once again get a congratulations prompt. Thank you for helping submit this data. You're helping protect our waterways. I really appreciate it. And yeah, those are the two surveys I have right now. So as I am doing for future work, I am currently working on some pre-displays and charts based off the previous data that Sergio has passed on to me. And I'm going to be kind of modeling it off of obviously the Global Water Watchers database, but also the Boston Water Watchers, which Eric showed with me. They have a very cool system which uses Mapbox and everything. It's web-based. I really like it. Let's see. Yes, once the surveys have been finalized, I will begin the mass production of them for each individual site. So each individual site will have its own physical, chemical, and its own bacterial survey. It'll have, just like before, like you saw before, it'll have its own QR code. It'll have its own link. So it's very clear what you need to do when you have your own site. You know where to go. And I'll be also adding a simple password or passwords. I'm going to talk to Eric about that one for each survey. So when you open that survey, you won't be able to submit it until you put in either a PIN or a password or something that keeps random people from being able to jump on the website and putting in their own data. So I want a little prevention there, a little security.
Hey, Dalen.
Yes.
I'm just seeing Gary sitting here from Thornton Creek. They just collect bacteria data and conductivity. So I'm just thinking conceivably we could either, they would have some sites that might not be in our Global Water Watch database. But they might also have a wish if they wanted to use this system for a survey that's maybe a simplified survey. Seems like that probably wouldn't be too difficult to produce.
Oh, not absolutely not. So you would just go ahead and tell me like what parameters do you want to be changed? We'll talk about this kind of after for sure. You just let me know and I'll change the parameters. Anything that's not necessary, I can make it no longer necessary. Anything that becomes necessary for them, I can make it necessary for them. But a part of that also is I want to create, as I told you, a survey for creating new sites where those kind of already pre-filled out fields. I'll create a survey where you put in those pre-filled out fields and it'll tell me what do I need to put into the future surveys, or what does Eric need to put into a future survey template to have those pre-filled out. As it stands right now, there's currently 88 sites that I pulled from the physical chemical surveys that Sergio gave me, 88 unique sites. Does that number seem about correct to you guys?
I think that seems about right. I think there's probably some sites that exist that outside of our system, like for instance, Thornton Creek Alliance has, I don't know, maybe 28 or 30 sites or something, maybe even more, that they don't enter data into the Global Water Watch database. So there's other kind of partner programs that may have sites that are in addition to that.
Yep, so kind of at the tail end of the mass production, and I'll start talking to you about what sites are not presented in Sergio's data. And I'll start kind of just either manually or we'll work on this survey for creating the surveys. And then I can mass produce those last 22 or something. Let's see what else. So then I got to repeat all these previous steps kind of for the biological survey. That's been kind of put on the back burner because I know you guys kind of prioritize the physical, chemical, and the bacterial monitoring. So my focus right now is on those two surveys, but I'm definitely going to go back and work on biological surveys once we kind of got these steps kind of down. And then once I have displays ready, we're starting to get data in and everything. Obviously the pre-displays are going, we know how everything wants to look. I'm going to start working with your guys' website developer and manager to obviously add in the QR codes and the links to all the surveys, but also the displays for the surveys. So you can see the data right up as you guys finish it and everything. And compare that to either EPA or Washington Department of Ecology standards. And you guys can kind of present your work as need be to advocate for what you guys do. Any questions?
Comment on the bacteria data form. You might want to think about splitting it into two, where the first form would be at the time of collection you'd fill in, and the second part you'd fill in when you're reading it. there's kind of this 24-hour separation between the two. So if you don't enter things right away, then you're going to have to write it down anyway.
That's something I can
So,
look into. So yeah, like kind of like a pre-form and then like a regular form.
I think
yeah, or set it up so it's easy to edit. Like I think survey 1, 2, 3 lets you save something and then finish filling it out later.
I think there's the
So,
option to like to be able to edit it.
I
Yeah.
think procedurally we haven't actually discussed that if we want to eliminate data sheets. I think right now I was operating under the assumption that we would still retain a data sheet and then enter the data also into this, but we could, that's something for us to think about and discuss whether this would supersede data sheets or if we still want to use data sheets for any reason.
I would really advocate for having the paper data sheets. I think it's important to have those to go back to.
Yeah, I agree. And actually one thing that I'm hoping to go back to as part of our process is in the past we had people email a photo of their data sheet to a particular email address where we archived stuff, and so that kind of helped us have a central archive. So I think that still is would be worth doing from a backup standpoint.
And then my immediate concern with doing multiple sheets is when the data is separate, it's kind of hard to append it together for graphing purposes. I mean, obviously, I think I can do that. There's a lot of freedoms when it comes to working with the software, even though it's proprietary. But obviously, the more together things are, the easier it is to work with. I didn't really mention this, but I know me and Eric in the background are kind of also working on the physical chemical survey, adding a water quality index calculator. It's a little more complicated than I thought it was going to be. But I'm talking with some experts right now on the methodology behind that. And one issue that I've already come across is the fecal coliform collection happens in another survey. So having that one variable separate off from another survey does make it quite a bit more complicated to get a full water quality index. So I'm seeing if I can do some kind of partial water quality index that misses one variable out of the, I think it's 6 or 8. So we'll see. I'm in talks with someone from the Washington Department of Ecology to see if that one variable can be dropped and still get a form of an accurate water quality index. But that's a whole nother aside. That's a whole other part of the project. It's a lot of fun.
Generally speaking, we're not doing BI, so you can't do a water quality index anyway.
Yeah, so I'm seeing what I can do with it. Maybe like some kind of partial one. What are they called? I was reading on these. I forgot the word for it, but there's like a simplified version. I think it's called Simplified Water Quality Index, actually. And we might be able to have some form of that. But I just want to make sure it's up to the Department of Ecology standards. I want to make sure it's good data you guys can use. I want to make sure the math is all correct. So that's another whole part of the project.
Awesome. Thanks, Dalen. That's fantastic. There's a couple questions in the chat, and then also I'm kind of shorting Gary on time.
Well, that's, we don't have to do my part today.
Okay, maybe we'll
You're
cover
approaching your hour meeting, so I couldn't do it in 5 minutes, I'll tell you.
Yeah, maybe what we'll do is we'll cover that at our next meeting, because I think you'll still be doing that project.
Yeah, we'll still be looking at our results and doing lots of comparisons with previous years. But again, what you guys are doing now and it'll be very exciting when you get to the graphing of it and being able to do it kind of internally. That's the best part of the whole thing. Putting numbers in is interesting and very minimal to what we're trying to do. So what I was going to show you basically is comparisons over 6 or 7 years of sampling at many different sites and how that's changed and where the issues are and where we're exceeding, what the problems, where we're getting better and where we're getting worse. And so anyway, we'll save it for another time.
Preview. All right, thanks.
Let's see those displays.
I had some questions in the chat, so I just want to respond to the questions in the chat and also the comments. So Lindsay mentioned that Adopt a Stream Foundation also has Earth Day events on Saturday, April 20th. Thank you, Lindsay. And that would be, if you go to streamkeeper.org, that would be a place to find those. Robert asked, what pH and turbidimeter would you recommend? Brian, what pH meter are you using?
Well, we use a YSI just because that's the one the Department of Ecology recommends and accepts. But there's a lot of good ones out there. I can't imagine, and they're a lot cheaper.
So yeah, Eric, we're starting to look at pH meters. It's just like the conductivity meter. Basically, you can buy one for about $20. I've been doing some calibrations with it before we start trying to use them to see how long they stay in calibration. But so far they've looked pretty good. But it's really we're really just starting that.
Yeah, the same thing goes with conductivity meters. They're pretty cheap and they're pretty accurate.
Yep.
You can really get a good calibration before you head out.
Yeah.
Now we just need to find an inexpensive turbidity meter. Okay, another question. Will this new survey site populate the Global Water Watch database? No, this is actually going to ultimately supersede the Global Water Watch database. One of the reasons we're moving to this new form is because we've had issues with the Global Water Watch database. The Global Water Watch database, well, I'll leave it at that. We've had issues with it. So this actually, assuming that we're successful in developing this, which I think we're going to be, this actually is going to solve problems for other Global Water Watch nodes, like new ones that start up around the world. Like for instance, right now there's some new programs in Patagonia. There's a program trying to start up that they have the same issues of trying to get their Global Water Watch database going, where if we can create this with this kind of standardized software package and these survey forms, it'll make life easier for them too. So they may actually move to this versus us repopulating theirs.
Then, yeah, also kind of what Eric's talking about. I'm keeping track of different versions of my survey as well, because obviously a lot of the pre-filled information that are specific to us, I'm assuming that, they probably wouldn't have that pre-filled information. So I'm leaving certain fields open in previous versions for them. But yeah.
The thing about this is that Dalen is unique and excellent, but there are, fortunately, in case, hopefully I keep working with Dalen for a long time because Dalen's awesome. But if for some reason we didn't have Dalen, this is a standard product, and there are other individuals who we could find conceivably who would be able to work on this if we need it. So it's more standardized.
And the data is a little bit more in your guys' hands. So if, like, whatever reason Esri goes through any major changes, it's really easy to just pull all that data out. You won't have to go through someone else and go through those steps as well.
Great, thank you.
Some other questions. If you use data sheets and then enter into the survey, would you want to set the date and time for physical chemical just like you do for bacteria rather than setting itself? The date and time on the physical chemical is a default, but you have the option to also enter a different one than what it defaults.
Yeah, thank you. I was going to say that.
And then the other chats are lots of thanks to Dalen.
Yeah, like I said, I really believe in what you guys do, it's really important.
Yeah, Dalen's amazing. Okay, anything else that anybody has to share or questions or let's see any hands up? No, okay. All right, great. Well, I'm going to say thank you for everybody for coming to the meeting, and I'll record this and share it with all of you, as well as with others who were not able to make this meeting. And then please try out the surveys, test out just entering data, and then send feedback to Dalen, and then Dalen and I will kind of regroup and get these things finalized so that we can start collecting data this way. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.